Alison Brie plays the very complicated Ruth Wilder, aka Zoya the Destroyer, on Netflix's Glow, a role that earned her Golden Globe, SAG, and Critics' Choice nominations. I'm Kevin Jacobsen, writer at Gold Derby, here with Alison herself.
Hi.
Hi. So, Alison, I actually wanted to rewind before season two to where you guys were nominated for 10 Emmy Awards for season one, including Best Comedy Series. Yeah, and there were two wins for you guys for the show for production design and stunt coordination. So, what was the response from the cast and the crew as far as sort of getting all that love right away for your first season?
Oh my God, it's incredibly exciting. Everybody that works on the show puts so much into the show, and I think it's really reflected in all departments. It couldn't be more well deserved for Shauna Duggins, our stunt woman, our stunt coordinator, to have won the Emmy. She's the first woman to win the Emmy in this category. And what Shauna does, I feel like I say this all the time, is like a lot of stunt coordinators coordinate stunt people on shows to do stunts, but Shauna teaches all of us to be stunt people and then coordinates the stunts that we do on the show, as well as doubling Betty sometimes on the show. And I have a great stunt double, Helena Barrett. So the two of them, along with Chavo Guerrero Jr., do all of our wrestling training and coordinate all of our matches and choreograph them and double us sometimes, and just are also a great source of moral support. And they really bolster us in a lot of ways. And also our production design team is totally incredible, led by Todd Fujisuma. I'm not pronouncing his last name right, I think it's safe to say. There's an F and a J at play, and that's tricky for me.
Yeah.
Fjellstead, I think it might be.
Fjellstead, yes.
Fjellstead. Todd is incredible. And our show, I think, top to bottom, what's great about it, you know, the 80s are such a sort of fetishized thing, I think. And what I've loved about Glow is how well we kind of keep it grounded and realistic, even though it was such an over-the-top era. I feel like the show, the whole look of the show, and our cinematographer, Christian Spranger, was nominated as well for season one. And I feel like he had so much to do with the show having a real kind of dingy feel to it. These are not characters who have a lot of money. These places that they're going are not especially glamorous. So I like that it never feels like real kitschy, fake 80s. I think it feels grounded and real and kind of what we remember. I was a baby in the 80s, but it kind of reminds me of what I remember.
Definitely. So season two certainly gave you a lot to do, a lot of really strong material, with Ruth really kind of taking on some initiative and directing the TV show title sequence, rejecting the advances of the network president, having her ankle broken by Debbie, having these really interesting relationships with like Russell and Sam. So was there anything that you were either excited or nervous about exploring with Ruth in this season?
Not nervous about anything. Everything is so fun on the show, and it's such a treat. I think that they're constantly, our writers are constantly pushing boundaries and challenging us with new and different types of material. So that's really fun. Talking to Liz and Carly, our creators, about the show, they don't want any season to ever feel the same. So season one was all about the girls training and discovering wrestling and what it is. And then season two is all about us making the show. And so we're in our wrestling character looks a lot more of the time. And you see a lot more. It's a lot more like behind the scenes production design, which was really cool. I think it was such a fulfilling season because already in season one, this show is an actor's dream because we get to do really nuanced dialogue work and scene work with each other. And then we have really broad comedy stuff and physical stuff in the ring. And season two sort of took that to new levels, like on both ends. I feel like we did like real deeper, more gut-wrenching emotional character work in season two. And then on the flip side, we did an episode within an episode, which couldn't have been zanier, sillier, crazier. And what a treat. I think to see what these people have been making the whole season. You're kind of living, you know, inside the show. So to actually get to see what's going on, I think was really fun, and just such a blast to play Olga, and yet another character on the show. But always my favorite scenes are the ones with Betty Gilpin. She's so wonderful. She's such an incredible actress and such a close friend of mine, you know, now after working together on this show and shooting those scenes with her. I just feel like we don't overthink it. I don't have to think about anything. I can just listen and respond to her. And we're both so deeply intrinsically connected to our characters and their journey. So in season 2, getting to episode 7, where they have this big cathartic fight scene with each other, sort of releasing years of pent up resentments on one another. I think that's my favorite scene that we shot in season 2.
Wow. Yeah. I wanted to get to a very big storyline that you had in terms of her eventually breaking your ankle in the ring. I kind of want to talk about the lead up to that and what happens with the network president, which is a really dramatic and dark moment.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I had read somewhere that the writers of the show had kind of written a lot of season 2 before the Me Too movement happened.
Yes.
And it's so fascinating kind of how timely it ended up being. So when you were playing that uncomfortable scene, did it make it any easier to knowing that Ruth would be rejecting his advances rather than sort of giving in to them?
I mean, it's a very progressive idea for the time, to be honest. Shooting that episode was so interesting because, as you said, you know, so they had written it before even the Harvey Weinstein stories came out. But then we were shooting it really in the midst of, you know, every day it felt like there was a new breaking news story about a man, you know, doing something terrible. And even that day, I don't remember who it was, but some big story had just come out about an actor that a bunch of people on our crew had worked with. And so that was sort of, you know, I think I certainly had very complicated feelings reading all these stories. I think everybody was feeling a lot of women that I was working with and on our show talking to each other. It was a very emotional time, and sort of reading what other women had gone through was bringing up things from our own experiences, and, you know, trying to ask myself, how have I felt in certain situations? Would I have had the strength to do what Ruth did? Did I ever? So that was another sort of cathartic kind of scene to shoot, to kind of enact it and be empowered in the moment was really fun. And if anything, it was like the opposite shooting it, because, oh God, I can't think of his name. You'll have to look it up and tell me the actor who plays the executive in that scene with me. He was so wonderful and couldn't have been sweeter, to the point that truly in the scene, we were sort of like, you have to be more gross for it to play. Like, you know, definitely he was incredibly respectful and like asking for permission. And we were like, you have it, it's okay. So that was very refreshing and nice. And I love the way that they wrote that episode, because the episode itself and sort of the meaning of it and the most important scene in the episode is not that scene in that hotel room, but rather the scene afterwards between Ruth and Debbie discussing what happened and Debbie's reaction. And I think that was also a really complicated thing for all of us to read. And you know, Betty at first felt very like, oh God, I hate that my character reacts in this way to you, because obviously Betty as a person would never react that way to a friend. But I think it's so important to show that side of the female perspective in a very accurate way to the time period, because again, it's sort of like we want to kind of, you know, it's such a strange moment of women really speaking up and using their voices and connecting and realizing that we have all had similar experiences, and letting go of the shame of having had those experiences, like our personal embarrassment with having put ourselves in these situations, which of course is not the truth. But I think for a long time, women were not able to cope with that shame. And really, that scene is sort of about Debbie coming to terms with the compromises she's made in order to advance her career, and sort of like not wanting to face a person who made the other choice. So that episode, it was, I think it's a fantastic episode. And I also always love how our writers do look at these types of storylines in a different way. And it doesn't feel like a message episode that's like, this is the Me Too episode. It's more complicated.
Yeah, I love the kind of nuanced approach to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with how things kind of end in season 2 with Ruth and Debbie, after all they've been through, they've kind of forgiven each other almost, or at least made amends. We've certainly kind of seen a lot of conflict between you two, but what do you think it is that's ultimately about each other that makes them kind of still want to be friends even after all the drama they've been through?
I think there's a lot of love there. I think there's a really deep love between these two friends. And Betty and I have always talked about Ruth and Debbie being the core of the show, is this will they, won't they between these two characters, like that they're the core romance of the show, even though season 2 saw some new, romantic ideas popping up for Ruth, especially, and season 3, maybe even more so, but for everybody. But I do think that Ruth and Debbie really challenge each other. They're very opposite in a lot of ways. So they sort of push each other. I think that for Ruth, Debbie is a character who's very bold and speaks her mind. She's such an alpha, and Ruth can use a lot more of that in her life. And then, for Debbie, I think Ruth does have this sort of strong moral structure, sleeping with Debbie's husband aside, and her conviction in her art and the stuff that she does. I think Debbie sort of wants some of that in her life, and they really are good complements to one another. I think it's been proven with the two of them on this show that they are really intrinsically linked, and like even Debbie seems to value her friendship with Ruth more so than her husband, the fact that they're able to get through this thing as friends. I do think the ankle break was a good thing because we needed to level the playing field a little bit. Although some people might not think that does it, but definitely going into season 3, these two are on the road to recovery in their friendship and kind of starting to move past the incident.
Right. You're kind of even. Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, another fascinating relationship for Ruth, I think, is the one she has with Sam. And in some ways, I don't know how you feel, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of another show you were on, Mad Men, and kind of the relationship with Don and Peggy a bit.
Oh, I was about to say, I don't think Trudy and Pete.
Well, no.
Ruth and Sam.
But it's like this male-female relationship. They have their conflicts. There's occasional hints of romance, but it's never fully gone there between the two of them. What do you kind of think of the two of them, like in their working relationship?
I like that comparison. I'll take a Don and Peggy comparison. Absolutely. Well, they're another, I think they challenge each other too. And in some ways they're like oil and water. I think that, but I truly almost even more so, I feel like almost even more so than Ruth and Debbie, because Ruth and Debbie are so explosive, obviously, in their relationship. And like, in terms of them bringing good stuff out of one another, that's true. But also there's like jealousies. And like we saw in season 2, these resentments, these other things that have been building up. With Sam, I think there is a more pure like thing that where they do bring the best out of each other. Like Sam clearly has been inspiring Ruth to take on directing, to try to do more of that type of stuff, and put herself out there a little more in terms of her work and taking charge. And she softens him up a little bit. In spite of himself, I think he really likes her, even though he's not used to that kind of like positive can-do attitude being anywhere near him. And I think because Ruth and Debbie are always so at odds. Sam is kind of Ruth's closest friend, even though in season 2 Ruth is so in the doghouse for a lot of season 2, but Sam constantly surprises Ruth and ends up being this incredible support system for her. In season 1, he drove her to get an abortion. He still is the only character to know about that, so they do really connect on a deeper level. And I feel like there's something to the thing about the romance of them is like, I think from the very start that neither of them would ever think that they would think of the other one romantically. You know what I mean? So I don't think that Ruth is Sam's type at all, and I just don't think it's a natural. Ruth is so much thinking about work. She's hardly thinking about romantic stuff anyway, that their connection is very surprising to both of them.
Definitely. They're some of the most fun scenes to watch between the two of you.
It's really fun. I love working with Mark. And he's so natural. I feel like in the scenes, it's also really fun to act with him because there's kind of no bullshit, which is how the characters are with each other.
Definitely. Well, since we're an awards website here at Gold Derby, I was actually hoping to get your perspective a little bit on an Emmy-related topic.
Oh.
Because yeah, it's okay. Because you received nominations at the Golden Globes, the SAG Awards, the Critics' Choice Awards last year for season 1, and I think a lot of people thought that you would get an Emmy nomination, but unfortunately, it didn't end up happening. But the show was certainly embraced in other ways.
Yes,
of course.
yes.
I think sometimes actors can be disappointed or angry when those kinds of accolades they might expect to get don't happen. So I guess I was just curious, first of all, just what you do when something you might expect to happen doesn't end up panning out, whether it's an award or maybe even a part that you might have wanted, and sort of how you can proceed as an actor.
Well, interesting question. I think I don't think there's anger involved. I think there can be certainly situations where there's disappointment. And for me, I think that usually I just embrace the disappointment immediately and then let it go. I mean, in this case, for Glow, it was such a, of course I was disappointed last year and maybe will be disappointed again this year. But the show was nominated. I was so excited that Betty was nominated. We had 10 nominations across the board for our work. So that sort of was able to balance out personal disappointment in support of the full team and like just being really happy that the show was acknowledged. So few shows are nominated at all. So the fact that the show itself was nominated, I think I was able to sort of use that as a personal win and be proud of the people that I work with. And when it comes to roles, I definitely take time to mourn stuff, and some hurt more than others. Sometimes you're up for something and you just go like, oh, I'm up for that. I didn't think I would be right for the role. And then when it doesn't go your way, you're like, that makes sense. Other times you really are hoping, and I've certainly shed tears over parts I didn't get and things like that. And I feel like that's fine. Like I said, I like to just be like, I feel terrible, cry it out, and then move forward. Otherwise, I feel like you could carry the resentment for too long. And it's also, I guess it's also always a nice reminder that that's not not getting roles, but I guess when it comes to like the awards stuff, this is an award website. I don't want to belittle anything at all because it is such an honor that Glow is included in this type of stuff. And I'm very grateful for the Golden Globe and SAG nominations. But I do think it's easy to get caught up in all of it because we all have teams of people that are talking to you about that stuff constantly. And, you get in this system where you're campaigning for things and things like that. And it's just easy to kind of get caught up in it. It's nice to have a reminder that that's not the reason that we got into this business, hopefully. And that's not, the work is the thing. And I couldn't be more proud of the work that I do on Glow and the work that the people I work with, the work that they do, and just to be a part of the show that I love so much. So that's sort of the thing, you know?
Definitely. I think that's a really healthy perspective.
I think so. I'm trying.
Yeah. Well, just as we're wrapping up, we just heard that season 3 of Glow is dropping on Netflix on August 9th. Very exciting.
Like, super excited.
Yep.
Oh,
So is there anything you can just tease about what we can expect now that the ladies are heading to Vegas?
oh my gosh, the ladies are in Las Vegas. I haven't had a real prep talk about what I can say or not say, so I'll try not to say too much. Um, but it definitely is feels totally different from any other season that we've done. And if season 2 felt like more emotional, season 3 I think is even more so. The stakes have never been higher in some ways, and people are tapping into some really deep stuff, which is very cool. It's also a bit sexier of a season. There's sort of like a lot more sexual activity. I'm not speaking personally, but for a lot of the characters, it's very Vegas. The girls are going out. They're making money regularly, so their wardrobe is getting a bit glitzier and stuff like that. And you see a lot of different sides of the characters.
That sounds fantastic.
Pretty big, but a good pitch. It's an
Definitely.
awesome season. I'm really excited for people to see it.
Yeah, we're all very excited here at Ghost Derby for that. So thank you so much, Alison, and best of luck for you and the show at the upcoming Emmys.
Thank you.
For everyone else, please subscribe for more award season interviews and head to goldderby.com to make some predictions.